Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. Unfortunately, I'm experiencing some difficulties with the internet, speed of internet, and therefore my apologies if live stream will end without warning. Not my fault, dear friends. Something is wrong with their internet, but hopefully it will work out. Hopefully it will work out. Today is 22nd of June. Now it's 11 o'clock in the morning Moscow time, and this is community chat, new summary from Moscow program. And first of all, community chat Sunday. So I hope you have a great weekend. As always, dear friends, initially I will share with you a news segment, and I will try to make it, you know, quick one. And then we can exchange opinions about any topic. Basically, I will be actively engaged in the chat, and I will just ask her to put capital Q before the question if you have one, or if you want to highlight a certain opinion or user capital letters. That would help her, so that I will notice it easier. So okay, that's been said, let's start this news segment, dear friends. And unlike expectations, I'm going to start with this report from RIA Novosti that President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, will participate today on June 22, the day of remembrance and sorrow here in Russia, in ceremony at the tomb of a unknown soldier, in accordance with the long-standing traditions. I remind you, dear friends, that on 22nd of June 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union and started the war against Soviet people. And of course, we always remember this. And our praise go for all the heroes that sacrificed their lives while protecting future of humanity. I will say, basically, not just future of us, next generations, but future of humanity. And let's talk about some other news, and how ironic it is that exactly today US conducted their strike on Iran, basically started the war against Iran on the very day that Nazi Germany attacked Soviet Union. Quite unfortunate developments are taking place. And not surprisingly for many of us, because I was predicting that globalists, Western ruling class, was planning to provoke regional war in the Middle East for how many months now, or how many years actually. So veterans of our community would not be surprised for sure while observing current developments in the Middle East. But when it comes to news itself, Trump delivered the address after US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. So US President Donald Trump addressed the nation at the White House following their operation against Iran's nuclear facilities. Main statements of his speech is that the aim of the strike was to limit Tehran's nuclear capabilities. Key uranium enrichment facilities were completely destroyed, according to Trump, and he's lying, by the way, obviously. Now Iran must make a peace. I mean, how deranged this psychopath and scum of humanity really is, that he just bombed the country illegally, absolutely illegally, by the way, while breaking every possible law local in US, including US Constitution and also international. Absolutely unprovoked aggression from US. And he's speaking again about peace. Someone should treat this psychopath, by the way, some psychiatrists, right? The next attack from Washington could be much worse. He is also threatening any action by Iran against the United States will be met with a more serious response. That's the key point of his statements. Shameful, I mean, scum of humanity, by the way. US citizens should be shamed, really, that they have such a leadership. That is a total disgrace. It's total disgrace of humanity, absolutely, right? And as I already said, right after strikes, Trump went to continue his threats against Iran. As if anybody at this point really cares what this moron has to say. IAEA went to state, International Atomic Energy Agency went to stated that there was no increase in radiation levels outside Iran's nuclear sites. This is not the first time IAEA is making such a statement, which is indicating that they are increasing radiation inside these nuclear facilities. But for whatever reason, seems like these radioactive particles are asking permission to leave the premises, and they've been denied. I mean, how crazy is that? There is an increase in radiation inside the facility, but nothing outside. This is the attitude, by the way, that these so-called elites of the world have towards us, ordinary people. They think we are completely stupid, by the way. That's what they think. These total morons, right? But what is unfortunate, by the way, Iran's state institution that is in charge of these nuclear facilities is playing along with the globalists. Surprisingly to me, by the way, they are playing along with the globalists, with IAEA, and they are also saying, according to reports that I see, that there is no increasing radiation outside of nuclear facilities, which is yet again crazy to say. But yet again, in case of Iran, one might argue that the Iranian leadership don't want total chaos to erupt and uncontrolled processes to begin, while people will start panicking, not knowing what to do, where to run, right? But IAEA should act differently and should provide world community with their precise information. This is not the way UN's institution, and formally, by the way, IAEA is not a part of Mossad of Israel, Israeli Secret Service, or the part of US Secret Service. Formally, International Atomic Energy Agency is a UN institution. Although we all understand that in reality, it's exactly Mossad and MI6 and CIA that are running, pulling the strings there. So if you are interested about radioactive contamination, radioactive pollution, we're not going to receive information about it, it seems like, because clearly the so-called elites are hiding information. You tell me why they are doing this, but they are hiding information for how many days now? First Israel, and now US is bombing nuclear facilities, and all we hear from officials of all sorts is that, well, there is no contamination just inside the facilities, but outside it's all good, by the way. You can go for a walk there, enjoy your weekend. I mean, crazy. And unfortunately, alternative media did not really pay needed attention to this topic because it's extremely dangerous. No one then should be surprised, by the way, in UK, for example, if they will wake up one day and if they have a dosimeter instrument that can count radiation levels, they should not be surprised if they see that, wow, I mean, radiation levels are like 10 times higher than it's supposed to be, or 1,000 times higher, because you never know in which direction we're gonna take these radioactive particles, right? RIA Novosti is also reporting that, well, we have Iran's first response, political response. US started the war by striking nuclear facilities, Iran's foreign ministry is saying. And of course, US has started the war. United States started the war by striking Iran's nuclear facilities. The Islamic Republic's foreign ministry is saying the world must not forget that it was the United States that during the diplomatic process betrayed diplomacy, supported Israel's aggressive and the treacherous actions, and now completing the violation of their law and adding to the crimes of the Zionist regime has started a dangerous war against Iran. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran is saying, and well, it is true, by the way. US finally confirmed what I was saying for a very long time, that we are at the point when negotiations or the talk with the collective West countries is absolutely useless and total waste of time, because they cannot be trusted, right? And they are time after time demonstrating that they will use negotiations as a tool of deception. It's factual, isn't it? We are not exaggerating nothing. It's just what it is. And therefore, I really hope countries worldwide, including Russia, by the way, will stop participating in this nonsensical game that West is waging, right? While attacking all of humanity and endangering all of humanity. And I hope Russia will cut diplomatic ties with all countries in the collective West, with all of them, literally all of them. Just cut all diplomatic ties, all connection, economical, social, anything, by the way. Just cut it all, right? And we should isolate Western world until it's not too late, because it is obvious that West is waging war against the rest of the world. This is just a factual. West is waging war against the rest of the world. And one of the ways we can protect ourselves is to isolate this Western world. It is what it is. Leave the door open for ordinary people like us to migrate from these Western countries in country of their choosing. World is big, right? But when it comes to states themselves and their political class, their so-called Western elites and Western ruling class, they should be isolated. And all ties with these Western countries, until these countries are controlled by these psychopaths and the genocidal maniacs, should be cut completely. There is no reason why should Moscow or Beijing or New Delhi or I don't know, Brazil, any other country, by the way, from BRICS or the rest of the world should, have a conversation with the collective West. It's total waste of time, right? We should have self-respect, after all. It's a matter of self-respect for the humanity. We have to isolate collective West. We don't really have a choice but to do so. And I think inevitably that's exactly what is going to happen. And process is already underway, and this process will only accelerate from now on. TASS News Agency, meanwhile, is reporting that according to U.S. propaganda outlet NBC, that is, U.S. braces for possible Iranian retaliatory strike on U.S. targets. Administration of the U.S. President Donald Trump is preparing for possible retaliatory strikes by Iran on American facilities, presumably within 48 hours. Obviously, this is our first thought that many people will have, that Iran now have to retaliate with everything it has against all their U.S. assets in the Middle East and everywhere that Iran can reach with its missiles and other means. But I would not be so extreme in this regard. I said many times before that globalists, Western ruling class, wants to provoke regional war, right? And one should keep in mind, for their reasons, by the way, that I have explained before many times, right? Yesterday also. And therefore, Western ruling class, in this attempt to create regional war, will try, and that is going to be next phase of escalation, they will try to provoke conflict between regional countries, between Iran and other countries in the region, especially Gulf countries, right? And Iran and the other countries there cannot allow this to happen. And one should keep in mind that a majority of US assets in the region are based in Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, right? Kuwait, Iraq also. Iraq is a bit different story. There are Shiite militia formations there in Iraq, and they might actually on their own take action against US military bases and obliterate them. But it will have nothing to do with Iran, at least not directly. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, and the rest, Iran should not target US bases there in those countries, because that will be used by a Western ruling class to further push local governments to get involved directly in a war against Iran, because main goal of the West, as I already said, is to provoke a long-lasting war, regional war there in the Middle East, to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait. And how they're gonna manage this? How they're gonna make sure that this destruction of navigation will be long, on the long terms? They have to start war in a region. They have to provoke war in a region on religious and ethnic lines. And if they succeed, by the way, then this sectarian and ethnic violence will happen not just in Iran or Iraq, by the way, but in Saudi Arabia also, in Oman, in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain. But majority of people in Bahrain, if I remember correctly, are Shiites, by the way. If I remember correctly, now correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there is a very big population of Shiites, by the way, in all these Gulf countries, right? Leadership of which is Sunni Muslims. So Western ruling class definitely has number of directions in which they will go ahead now to provoke this regional war on ethnic and religious lines. And therefore, I think Iran has to act with restraint. And despite the expectations of the, I guess, majority of the world that, Tehran will now retaliate with their massive strikes on US bases and so on, this should not happen. Tehran should not target US assets in Gulf states, in other countries, by the way. Supporters of Iran in Iraq, which is a bit different story, Shiite militias there can take action and obliterate US military bases if they have such capabilities. But yet again, Iran directly should not retaliate. Tehran must be focused more on diplomacy. Emergency meeting was called by Iran in UN, United Nations, and that's the way to go, I believe. That's the way to go. And yet again, Iran is not alone. Iranian people have friends in this world, and we will stand by people of Iran. And if Israel, US, or other NATO member states will dare to send their ground forces in Iran, without which obviously they will not be able to destroy this country, well, in that case, Iran will have every opportunity to take decisive action and basically to win this war, because I'm 100% convinced neither US nor its allies have armies that are capable to defeat people of Iran on the ground. And with airstrikes, missile strikes, they're not going to achieve that, right? So yes, US might expect and the rest of the world that Iran will retaliate with missile strikes and drone strikes now all over the Middle East on US assets. But no, this is not the way to go, by the way. More clever steps are needed. And I think Iran leadership will choose that path, not the path of escalation that will lead to sectarian and ethnic violence in the region that will harm all the countries and all the peoples, by the way, there. But Iran will choose path of diplomacy, and eventually, if US and its allies will dare to send their ground troops, then to topple the government and to establish their puppet regime there, well, in that case, people of Iran will receive all the support they will need to defeat their enemy. But right now, clever action will be to act with restraint. This is my take, dear friends. You might have different opinion, but I'm talking about strategical steps that needs to be taken, because it's none of their regional countries' interests to have a regional war there, right? It will demolish future of not just Iran. I mean, if West will succeed in provoking regional war. That will kill the future, by the way, for the many people of Iran and all the other countries, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, I mean, you name it, Oman, and Yemen is already in deep trouble, right? And by the way, one should also keep in mind that if collective West will still succeed in provoking a regional war, then you think where tens of millions of people gonna go from that region? You know, are Europeans ready to receive literally tens of millions of more refugees from all these countries that I mentioned now? They should get ready in case their elites will succeed in this crime against humanity, and if they will succeed to provoke regional war there. Vzglyad newspaper, meanwhile, is reporting that according to reports, US is deploying 5 more destroyers with a missile defense in the Mediterranean Sea. 5 US Navy destroyers armed with their anti-missile systems have been deployed in the Mediterranean Sea. USNI news reports citing military sources. Yes, US is preparing, by the way. This is just the beginning, right? We all understand that this strike that US conducted last night is just the beginning, and they're not going to stop. Western ruling class wants to provoke regional war there. And if they will fail in that, then they will use some other means, right? Including military means to basically shut down navigation in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait. And they need military assets for whichever scenario will be eventually adopted, right? And they are sending more and more military assets, warships, aircraft, you name it, right? Probably US is also deploying additional manpower in the region. We just don't hear about it in the news. But in any case, we should all hope that Western ruling class will fail, because that is in their failure is in best interest of humanity. TASS news agency is reporting that Houthi rebels or Ansar Allah movement in Yemen stated that they will attack U.S. vessels if they enter the Iran-Israel conflict, and U.S. did, right? Attacked Iran openly, and one should expect now that Houthi rebels will again start targeting U.S. Navy assets. As I said, by the way, there are other parties in the Middle East that are operating on their own. They have their own policies, they have their own ideology. Houthi rebels, for example, or Shiite militias in Iraq, and they don't need permission from Tehran to take action, right? So therefore, US assets can be targeted in Iraq by Shiite formations, and maybe even Sunni formations, by the way. And American assets can be also targeted by Ansar Allah movement or Houthi rebels. Let's see. At least they are issuing such a warning. RIA Novosti is also reporting that IRGC revealed targets of Iranian morning attack on Israel. This morning, Iran launched another retaliatory strike against Israeli military and logistical and energy facilities. And IRGC received this statement. The targets of Iranian morning attack on Israel were Ben Gurion Airport, logistics, Biological Research Center, military asset, Israel's support base, and decision-making centers at various levels. Iran's state broadcaster IRIB reports, citing Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. And yes, I shared on my Telegram and Twitter page some videos, by the way, of this morning's attacks. Lately, we all noticed that scale of Iranian retaliatory strikes become relatively small. Some 20-30 missiles are fired usually, last several days, maybe a little more, but it's not like large-scale missile attacks. And I have two explanations for that. Either Israeli attacks on Iran's military facilities were extremely successful, and Iran just have no missile capabilities, or the launchers to launch the missiles, or Tehran is playing, long game here. Tehran has a strategy for a long-term confrontation, and they're just using enough weapons to keep Israel in check, right? And I think it's more likely the second scenario. And also, I guess Iran is maintaining significant number of missiles in case Western ruling class will manage to force basically Gulf states to enter direct war with Iran. Let's hope that will not happen, but yet again, one should keep in mind that West has significant leverage over their Gulf states, local elites, leadership. After all, you think where all these extremely rich people or the countries in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and so on, where they keep their money? In the West, right? In the Western financial and the banking system, in Western economies. And all it takes one threat from the West that they will confiscate all their financial and other assets that they have in the West, and they might actually force local elites to do whatever they've been told. So therefore, Iran definitely has reasons to keep significant reserves of offensive weaponry in case West will manage to trigger these Gulf states to basically attack Iran, so that Iran will have a option to retaliate in that case. But yet again, let's hope West will fail, but we should keep in all possible scenarios. TASS news agency is reporting that, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev commented on Middle Eastern crisis and stated that Iran will continue its nuclear program at any cost. And he also questioned, by the way, Israeli nuclear program. How come that Iran cannot have a nuclear program and Israel can? This is not correct. And I believe there were some reports, by the way, that Medvedev went as far as to say that Israel should get rid of nuclear program too. I did not see his post directly, but I see he being quoted by other channels on the Telegram, and that was the essence of the statement. And in any case, I was saying for how long now that Israel has to be demilitarized and denazified. It's necessary to be done, by the way, because otherwise you will have no lasting peace in the Middle East. It's just factual. TASS news agency is reporting that, yesterday, I don't know if you paid attention to this news, dear friends, that yesterday, a special envoy of Trump, Kat Kellogg, was in Belarus. He had a meeting with the president of Belarus, some other high-ranking officials there. And after that meeting, information broke that Belarusian authorities have released 14 prisoners at the request of U.S. President Donald Trump. John Cole, deputy to Special Envoy Kat Kellogg, stated on his X page, among these 14 released prisoners, some of them are foreign citizens that committed crimes in Belarus, I guess CIA assets, one may argue, and there are several people were the so-called opposition figures, also assets of the Western secret services that were actively participating in an attempt of color revolution that happened a couple of years ago in Belarus, right, and failed. And all those people are outside of Belarus now, including one of the leading figures of this attempt of conduct revolution in Belarus a few years ago. Tikhanovsky, as you know, dear friends, his wife then was presented to the world by Western ruling class as a legit leader of Belarus, right? And she's, I don't know where she is even. I mean, no one cares really. And her husband was also released and already left Belarus. Okay, now they will both act as legit leaders of Belarus, I guess. But yes, that's their information. When I was posting this news on my Telegram and Twitter X page, I commented there that the leadership of Belarus should remember that talks with the Western so-called elites, including U.S. leadership, is quite often fatal for whomever is talking to them, and therefore Belarusian leadership should be careful. Should be careful, by the way. You cannot negotiate with the collective West. You just cannot. It's a fatal mistake, right? And if anybody had any doubts until now, then come on, man. Trump, like 2 days ago, was talking about 2 weeks, right? The 2 weeks was given to achieve some de-escalation, and this is after news broke that Trump was engaged together with Israel in deception operation all the way during those US-Iran talks with mediation of Oman, right, on nuclear program. After that, Trump said that, well, there is 2 more weeks for talks. And, well, after several days, he signed this order to attack Iran. So, I mean, what else have to happen, people in this world, to realize everywhere that you cannot negotiate with the leadership of collective West, with the Western so-called ruling class and the elites. You just cannot. Only way to go forward is to completely ignore them, right? That's it. You can talk with more success with the freaking dog, man. I mean, that will have probably more results if you will talk to dog, to cat, to chimp, right? To crocodile, for God's sake. Probably that will even make more sense than if you have a talks with the Western so-called elites, man. So it is what it is. I mean, everybody in this world should be very careful while they are engaged in talks with the so-called elites of the West. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, well, Russian armed forces liberated Zaporozhye settlement in DPR. Progress of the special military operation continues, of course. Also, Interfax reports about some interesting topic. If you remember, a couple of days ago, before St. Petersburg's International Economic Forum started its work, that has ended yesterday, by the way, I said with quite a confidence that most likely during this forum, contracts will be signed by companies, by countries, by companies from all over the world for tens of billions of dollars. And you guessed what? I was correct. So the SPIEF, St. Petersburg's International Economical Forums Organizing Committee reported that their forum participants signed agreements worth 6.3 trillion rubles, which is about $70 billion, by the way. Which is about $70 billion. Not bad, I will say, isn't it? Not bad. Delegations were from 144 countries participating in this forum. Big and small delegations from 144 countries were participating in this forum, which is, I will say, great success. Great success. So much for isolated Russia, isn't it? As Western ruling class law to say and Western propaganda. But I guess in the Western media, you're not gonna hear this news, by the way. Probably you didn't hear anything about St. Petersburg's Economical Forum, I guess. Or maximum very little. Also, interesting news was reported yesterday that Russian President Vladimir Putin will attend upcoming BRICS summit. And when this news broke, speculations began on internet that Russian president will travel to Brazil, where next forum will take place. But Yuri Ushakov, aide of Russian president, stated that format of his participation has not yet been chosen, and I think Putin not gonna travel to Brazil. It's just too dangerous. It's just too dangerous. By the way, Western ruling class is capable of any crimes, any provocations. We all know this. So therefore, no one should even think about in his inner circle to recommend him to fly into Brazil. There is other means, isn't it, to participate that are that should be preferable at this point. And when it comes to BRICS summit itself, earlier President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, stated that during the Brazil's leadership in the BRICS, and every year, by the way, there is different countries that are leading the charge in the BRICS. And Brazil's president stated that this year organization will be focused on alternative financial and banking systems, alternative to the Western one, extremely weaponized Western one. And I really hope either this year or hopefully at least in upcoming years, we will finally see this alternative financial and the banking system that is so needed in this world, by the way, because as long as Western ruling class has grab on through their financial and the banking system on finances of this world of many countries at least and businesses, they're gonna use this leverage to infiltrate multipolar world, to derail processes, integration processes in the multipolar world. So therefore, alternative banking and the financial system is needed already yesterday, by the way, day before yesterday, right? But hopefully, maybe this year, maybe next year, we will see some progress in this direction. My guess is that Western ruling class is using its influence inside the BRICS member states, some of them, to derail this process of creation of alternative financial system, right, and banking system. And this topic has to be addressed. And if any country, any particular country, no matter how important and so on, is derailing the process, then maybe there is no place for that country in the BRICS. Maybe that country was accepted mistakenly. Maybe, right? But alternative financial and banking system need to be created. I mean, it's just elemental stuff, right? It's not a freaking quantum physics, isn't it? It's much simpler stuff. And dear friends, this is it when it comes to news segment. Right now, I will check several Telegram channels for possible breaking news, and after that, we can have a community chat. Saudi Arabia is following the events with a deep concern. Oman also made statement that they condemned this attack on Iran. Iraqi government made also similar statement. Obviously, majority of the countries in this world will condemn this attack of US on Iran. Absolutely unprovoked attack, because Iran did not pose any threat for US, right? Any threat whatsoever. And Iran was attacked based on false narratives that were generated by Israeli and US, Western officials and propaganda means. We all understand this, isn't it? So yes, no breaking news for this moment. So let's have a chat, by the way, now. Let's talk about anything. And as I said, dear friends, please use capital Q before the question, right? So that I will see your question easily through comments. And so we have a question from Karen Terdov. I will start from the beginning, by the way, and go through questions and comments. So Karen Tordov is asking my question to did any Russian die in these attacks because Putin said they had a deal. Did Trump stab Russia in the back again? Well, Trump stabbed first of all, Trump stabbed in the back his own supporters, I will say, and he killed basically MAGA movement. I will argue that he quite effectively killed the MAGA movement because no one, barely anybody in US will ever believe that there are any politicians there that really believe that state or elite should be focused on America first. They bet on Trump and they played themselves basically quite effectively, right? So if Trump did stab anybody in the back, first of all, it's US citizens that trusted him, right? And when it comes to first part of the question about Russian citizens in Iraq, in Iran, sorry, there was no reports about any Russian citizen being harmed there. Many civilians were evacuated, but in Bushehr, by the way, in Bushehr nuclear power station, Russian scientists, Russian expert specialists are still working. Russian continues to construct nuclear reactors there, and next two nuclear reactors are scheduled to be completed next year one and the year after. I mean, 2026 one and 2027 another one. So work continues there. And yes, there was reports that Russian president, during his conversation with Netanyahu, demanded that this Bushehr nuclear power plant would not be targeted, and Russian specialists will be saved. And I see no official statements, at least, that Israel targeted Bushehr nuclear power plant. At least for now, they might target this power plant also. But at least for now, I have not seen official statements that this power plant was targeted, and there were no casualties among Russian citizens based on information that is available for now. But situation is developing rapidly, and tomorrow we might have additional information on that. Also, Nikos is asking, Luan, how is the Russian economy doing? Are the sanctions finally having an effect? From you and others, I hear increase in grocery prices, specifically on potatoes. What is going on? Well, as I said when I was talking about prices, by the way, like a couple of weeks ago, I said that in my personal opinion, this increase in price on potatoes specifically, and maybe a few more items from grocery, my understanding was that this was a deal that was made in a cartel deal, as it's called, right, between businesses. Time to time, this kind of stuff happens. Big businesses, to make more money, increasing prices on certain items, by the way. I don't know how they are choosing items that they want to ramp up the prices, but every year they are doing something like that, and I think this is something that anti-monopoly department of Russia have to study closely, because this is clearly something that has nothing to do with their economy or the supply chain. This is something that these businesses are doing, by the way, and I'm not against free market economy. Business should operate freely, but when businesses are beginning to speculate and harm society, they should be put in check. And if one finds out that this business or that business speculated, that business, leadership of that business should be put in prison for life, and business itself should be nationalized and then sold on auction, so that more responsible people will be in charge of that business. That's my take on how should we deal with these situations. And right now, I mean, maybe state institution, anti-monopoly service get involved, by the way, and issued some warnings, because it was yesterday or day before, in a grocery store, I saw prices of potato, exactly, it was like 80 rubles or something. So it dropped like 40%, something like that. And that drop in price also tells me that this was nothing. This increase in price was not related to supply chain, but it was related to speculations of the businesses. And those businesses should be punished for that. And whoever is in charge of those businesses, right? That's how states should deal with their provocateurs of all sorts and enemies of the society. And I think they are enemies of the society because they are destabilizing social fabric with these regular crimes, by the way. They are doing this kind of stuff regularly. Remember, like a year ago, there was some issue with their freaking eggs, man. What the hell? At some point, there was how you say grechka, by the way. Let me translate for you in English. Buckwheat, by the way. I mean, some time ago, like 2 years ago or something, there was some issue with the buckwheat. I know this product is not really popular in the West, but it is in Russia. And these criminals, by the way, in several businesses, they inflated prices of buckwheat, like, I don't know, significantly, right? And eventually, I mean, state had to get involved at that point, and then, prices drop down. So it's speculations, by the way. It has nothing to do with the state of Russian economy or supply chain or anything. It's a pure speculation on part of some of the criminal elements in the business community, and my hope is that they all will be punished, man, as they should. I would put them in prison for life if it was up to me, man. For sure. So don't worry, Nikos. No matter how many sanctions Western criminals that are in charge they're gonna impose on Russia, it will do much more harm to the Western economies than to Russia. And I guess we already proved this, isn't it? It's like third year, about 40,000 sanctions on Russia, and we are doing just fine, by the way, right? So that's my answer. Unfortunately, free economy has its downfalls, and that downfall is that there are always certain elements in a business that want to generate as much money as they possibly can, and they don't care about anything, right? They don't care about social fabric. They don't care about their fellow citizens or about what kind of harm they might do to a country. All they care is money. And there are that kind of elements, by the way, have to be neutralized. Because these are no good people, by the way. And therefore, I don't feel any sorry for bad people. They should be put in jail forever. That's it, man. Some may argue that that's too harsh of punishment. I don't care, man. If they prefer money over their own country and their own people, they didn't deserve to be a part of this society. That's my take on the situation, and I think I have point there. If you don't care about your country, if you're harming your country intentionally, if you're harming your people intentionally, then what the hell? How you deserve to be part of this society? You did not. That's it. Let's go through some other questions, by the way. Dear friends, I remind you right now, usually my wife passes me notice if there is any super chat on Rumble or something. I will try to monitor Rumble for super chat. in case there will be any super chat on Rumble. Unfortunately, there is no such a feature on YouTube, and I'm streaming on both platforms, of course, simultaneously. But well, if there will be any donations during the stream or after the stream, I'll be grateful, because this week was very weak in terms of support for this project. I can tell you that for a whole week of work, by the way, I received through donations amount of money that I could make while working 2 hours in McDonald's, by the way, somewhere, right? So, if you think that is not okay, then, and if you have opportunity to support, please do so. In the description box, there is links that you can use for support. I can see question from Julian Mellins. Do you think that Iran will respond by striking the US military directly? And how do you see this developing? Well, as I already said in a news segment, I think Iran will act more cleverly and will not attack US military assets directly, because obviously that will be used then by Western ruling class and their puppets in the Western countries, including US leadership, to further escalate, right? So why should Iran make life easier for its enemies? There is no need to do so. There is no. I know it's going to be difficult for Iranian leadership to explain to their society that we have to act more cleverly. We cannot trap ourselves in this down spiral of violence. We should think strategically, and therefore, I think there will be some strikes on US assets, but Iran will not attack directly. Houthi rebels might take action, Yemeni Ansar Allah movement, that is, Shiite or maybe even Sunni militia formations may take action against US assets in Iraq. But Iran should not directly attack US assets right now, because it would be counterproductive. It would be counterproductive, and therefore, I think Iranian leadership will act clever and will take actions that is in best interest of Iran and stability in the Middle East, that Iran has obviously strategical interest in. So therefore, no, I don't think Iran will attack directly US assets, although US assets going to be attacked by some third parties that are active in a region. And when it comes to possible developments of the situation, it is difficult to start. That's a question for $1 million, isn't it? As I said in a news segment in the beginning, US Western ruling class, unfortunately, has quite a leverage over their ruling elites of the Gulf states, Arab states. First of all, because they have weaponized their Western financial and the banking system, and they can basically blackmail leadership of these Gulf states while threatening that they will confiscate all their financial and their other assets if they will not obey orders, and they might force a leadership of Gulf states to get involved directly in this war against Iran. Hopefully, West will fail in this, but if they don't, then if Western ruling class will succeed in provoking regional war, then in that case, we will see terrible, as it is always, military conflicts on ethnic lines, religious lines, all over the Middle East, by the way. It's not just in Iran, but also in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Oman. Yemen is already divided, and civil war might erupt again there. Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, none of these countries going to be safe. And while provoking this violence on sectarian and their ethnic lines, Western elites will achieve their main goal in regards to Middle East, which is to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, right, and through Hormuz Strait. That's what they want. And well, yet again, if leadership of regional countries there is capable of strategical thinking, then they will do whatever is necessary to avoid such a devastating scenario, even if they're gonna lose potentially hundreds of billions that they have in Western financial and the banking systems as investments, because otherwise they're gonna lose everything. Otherwise, they're gonna lose literally everything. So it's better to lose whatever they have in the Western financial and banking system and maintain stability in the region than to lose literally everything. Which way situation will go, I don't know. But well, Western ruling class demonstrated quite many times that they are, and Western secret services, by the way, that they are experts of provoking civil wars, provoking military conflicts between the countries, and I'm afraid there is quite a high probability that they will succeed in regards to Middle East also. After all, they were preparing this plan for decades, right? This is not something that just happened, just began a week ago when Israel started attacking Iran. This is a pre-planned operation that was in preparation for most likely over a decade, longer than that, probably. So I'm afraid there is a very high risk that West might succeed in provoking the regional war there. But my hope is that they will fail. My hope is that regional countries, leadership of regional countries will see the picture, big picture, and will realize that it's better to lose whatever assets they have in the West, in the Western financial banking system, but that than to you lose literally everything, and in many cases even life. So rationality and the strategical thinking probably will prevail in the leadership of region there. Jerry here is asking Levan. There is a free card. Iran has first hit U.S. oil fields in Saudi, Bahrain, and Qatar, close the Strait of Hormuz, attack all U.S. bases in the Middle East. What do you think? I think this is exactly the steps that Iran should not take. This is exactly what Iran should not do. One should keep in mind, dear friends, that U.S. is self-sufficient when it comes to oil supplies, right? U.S. is actually exporting oil. Due to fracking revolution, U.S. now is one of the biggest oil producers and gas producers, by the way, in this world. Literally in top 5, right? Some 50 years ago, that was something of a fantastic scenario, but it is reality right now. So therefore, it's not the U.S. oil fields in Saudi Arabia, it's Saudi oil fields in Saudi, Bahrain, Qatar. And to avoid regional war and to avoid war on ethnic and religious lines, Iran should exercise restraint, because there is no better option, simply because there is no better option. So there should be no attacks on neighboring countries, direct attacks from Iran on U.S. military bases. We all understand that we are not talking about attacking Saudi assets. We are talking about, when the question is raised, we are talking about possible Iranian attack on military and other assets of U.S. in the region. But Iran should not do this. It's going to be counterproductive. When it comes to closure of the Hormuz Strait, by the way, that's exactly what globalists want. That's exactly what globalists want. And they want Hormuz Strait to be shut down and navigation in the Persian Gulf not just for a week or two, but for a long time, right? And that's why they want to provoke a regional war there on religious and ethnic lines, to guarantee that their navigation will be disrupted for years to come, right? And that way, globalists will manage to hit Chinese economy big time, and also to force China to increase its dependence on energy supplies from Russia and Kazakhstan, for example, right? And their strategy is to, once they will, and if they succeed in the Middle East, and if they force China to increase its dependence on Russia when it comes to energy supplies, Western strategy is to then, after some time, let's say, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 years, to somehow, and probably while working on these plans, they were calculating also their assets that they have in Russia and China that they can use, right? But I guess their game plan is to, after increasing Chinese dependence on Russia, to derail relationships between the two countries, one way or another, right? And basically to force China to go kinetic when it comes to securing closest energy fields for its economy. And where closest energy fields from China is? It's Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Central Asian republics, former Soviet republics, and Russia. That's what they want, by the way. They want to provoke war between China and Russia. That will become a quickly regional war, obviously, and will destroy not just the global south, but emerging multipolar world itself. And that way, well, Western ruling class hopes to maintain position of complete dominance on this world. That's one of the scenarios there that they are actively working, right? So therefore, definitely Iran should not shut down Hormuz Strait, by the way, because that will play in hands of globalists, right? That will play in hands of enemies of humanity that Western ruling class is. So that's my take on your questions, dear friends. You might disagree with me, but I think Iran should conduct itself based on strategical vision, and now it is really necessary to act with restraint, not to make life easier for Western ruling class, Also, question from Jerry Higher. How can West expect now Iran to sit at the table and talk of possible negotiations that's out of their windows? This has just turned into a Trump's war, absolutely insane. They don't expect, by the way, yet again, Western ruling class wants escalation in the Middle East, right? So what they expect and what the Western elites hoping for is that Iran will retaliate kinetically against U.S. assets in the region, and while doing so, because U.S. assets are located in regional countries, right? Not just in Iraq, but Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Djibouti, and just everywhere there, right? Western hope of Western elites, that they will use this Iranian attack, to basically gain additional leverage over their regional countries there, and to force them a bit easier to get engaged directly in war with Iran. So therefore, Western elites, no matter what they say publicly, by the way, they don't want no talks with Iran. They want further escalation. And they hope Iran will retaliate heavily. And they hope Iran will shut down Hormuz Strait, because that will play in the hands of the West, right? In both cases, West will use actions of Iran to basically push regional countries towards the war against Iran. And Tehran not gonna do this. I hope Tehran is not doing this, right? If anything, Iran may be focused on, and obviously Western collective West is not going to stop. They're going to escalate, right? And strikes on Iran going to continue. But best Iran can do, if war is inevitable, best chances Iran has is to basically trigger its enemies to send ground forces. Into Iran, because then Iranian militaries will have, and Iranian people will have opportunity to give a good fight and defeat enemy. Until then, Iran should maintain restraint, exercise restraint, I think. I can see super chat on Rumble. Miss Miwit, sorry for not pronouncing your nickname correctly. Thank you for a $2 donation. What's stopping Russia, China from joining and decapitation on Israel and anything US has close by? It's last hope for humanity. Well, I do see somewhat similar questions why Russia and China don't confront collective West openly, and the main reason is that in that case we will all die, literally. If China and Russia will now confront collective West openly, that will resolve into full-scale nuclear exchange, and humanity will die. Most likely, this planet will be sterilized, right? That's how many nukes we have combined. I mean, all of us, right? So therefore, yet again, Moscow and Beijing also have to act with cautiousness, decisively, but with certain cautiousness, because we don't want humanity to end, right? We don't want human civilization to end. We just want to help Western societies basically to get rid of these criminals that are basically keeping them as a hostages in the West, right? And I think both countries, not just Moscow and Beijing, but other countries outside of the collective West should be focused exactly on that. How to help people of Europe, people of US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, people of collective West countries to regain control over their countries and their destinies. How we can help them to get rid of these psychopaths that are in charge of collective West. That's the way to go forward, I think, without provoking full-scale war and end of humanity. So, I'm quite sure Russia, China, many other countries, by the way, are in support of Iran and providing whatever support is necessary. But right now, best help for Iran would be to recommend Tehran to keep calm. It is difficult, extremely difficult, obviously, right? But it is the best way to go forward, to exercise restraint, prepare for possible ground invasion of the enemy, right? When you will have a chance to defeat your enemy on the ground, and in no circumstances attack your neighbors, even if territories of your neighbors are used by US and other NATO member states, because one should keep in mind that these countries are also hostages. You think Saudi Arabia's leadership is happy that they've been hostage of the collective West for decades and decades, or leadership of Bahrain or Kuwait are happy to be hostages of the West? They are not happy about it also, right? And so Iran should send a clear message that Iran has no issues with its neighbors, and even should emphasize that Iran is not attacking assets of the US and other NATO member states in a region out of respect of neighbors and for sake of peace in the region, because that's how we might have better chances basically to avoid regional war in the Middle East, because with exception of collective West and Western elites, call it globalists, neocons, and also Zionists, by the way, are there. With the exception of those groups, rest of the humanity have no interest in wars, right? And obviously, we have no interest in regional wars, including in the Middle East. It's extremely dangerous and harmful, right? So that's my answer, dear friend. Russia and China is not escalating on extreme levels with the collective West for sake of humanity, because Russian leadership don't want all humans to die. And Chinese leadership also don't want all humans to die. And that's exactly what will happen if we will go in all-out war. Some people in the West may be not realizing how dangerous all this situation is, because they are under influence of propaganda of the Western ruling class, right? But the situation is extremely dangerous. Let's continue with some more. Saturn is asking, Putin often says how many Russian speakers live in Israel. When you read the comment section, you see that Israelis are very pro-Ukraine. Why is Putin so cardinal in his cordial in his tone with Israel? Well, I would argue with you, Saturn, that all Israelis are pro-Ukrainian. I don't think so. And just relatively recently, I saw videos exactly from Israel, by the way, when there was people were celebrating Victory Day. It was 9th of May, yes. And people were celebrating victory, Russian speakers in Israel. And someone gets close to this gathering with the Ukrainian flag and start shouting something. And that someone was knocked out very fast. So therefore, definitely not all Israelis or all Russian speaking Israelis are pro-Nazi and pro-fascist, right? That Kiev regime is actually. And when it comes to tone of Russian president in regards to Israel, well, I guess this Putin and Netanyahu, they do have relationships, right? That decades-old relationships, and that plays some role, I guess. Also, out of respect of former Russian citizens that are living in Israel, maybe Russia is statements from Russia in regards to Israeli leadership is not as extreme as one might expect. But same time, dear friends, Russian official policies was always very clear, isn't it? And Russia has criticized Israel on many occasions and does it regularly when it comes to actions that Israel has taken in Gaza, for example, right? And Russia criticized Israel for actions against Iran now. So, I would not say that Russia is supporting Israel. No. And tone of Russian president may not be like angry, as I said, maybe because his tone is not really that angry, even when he speaks about Zelensky, by the way, and Ukrainian Nazis, right? So, uh, probably you've been somewhat misled. I don't know. But Russian policies, official policies, I mean, in no way you can interpret as a pro-Israeli, right? Or in support of actions of the Israel right now. No, Russia was very critical, is very critical, and will be very critical whenever Israel is committing crimes, as it does in regards to Palestinians and as it does in regards to Iran now. You know. Aviaki is asking what happened now, what will China do, what will Pakistan do, what happens to the BRICS. Well, BRICS will hopefully BRICS will continue further development and more countries will join this organization that is, one may argue, if not the main, then one of the foundational stones of the emerging multipolar world. And well, as I said, Moscow and Beijing, I mean, China and Russia will try their best to de-escalate situation in the Middle East and to avoid regional conflict and the subsequent shutdown of the navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait. And that's it for this moment, by the way. If it comes to ground invasion into Iran, I'm quite sure China and Russia will directly or indirectly, but will help Iran to defend itself. And I believe both countries helping Iran right now, by the way. It may not be that open information, but I believe both China and Russia are supporting Iran right now as we speak. And there are dozens of other countries worldwide. First of all, BRICS member states, right? So Iran is definitely not alone. And when it comes to Pakistan, well, Pakistan is a big question, isn't it? Because this country, historically speaking, at least since 70s, 80s, Pakistan began to become divided between two sides, right? One side is West, US, and the US, UK, West. And on the other side, there is China. And Chinese influence in Pakistan rose, especially, and connections between the secret services of China and Pakistan, militaries of China and Pakistan during the Soviet Afghanistan war, when Soviet troops were in Afghanistan, because many people may don't know that vast majority of weapons, by the way, I'm not talking about some 1% or 2% or 10%. According to opinion of well-informed people here in Russia, some 70-80% of weaponry that Mujahideens had was originated from China during war between Mujahideens and Soviet forces in Afghanistan, right? So China was actively involved in this war against Soviet Union, and they established quite a close communication with their Pakistani militaries and secret services at that time. And since then, I mean, China became a major economical superpower, right? And these connections did not disappear. They become even more significant, right? And China is now selling to Pakistan, I mean, China is now main economical partner of the Pakistan, let's say this way, and Chinese militaries are operating. Pakistani militaries are operating Chinese weapon systems, and there is very close ties between the two. And so, at the same time, by the way, while mentioning Afghanistan, of course, US and UK also were involved against Soviet Union, and it was US that was providing Mujahideens with, for example, Stinger missile systems and so on. So that should be highlighted also. But majority of the weapons was transferred to Mujahideens by China, directly or indirectly, but by China. And also US at the time of this conflict with Soviet Union and their Mujahideens began actually cooperating with which organization? Al-Qaeda, by the way, right? And with Osama bin Laden directly. CIA, he was a CIA's best friend. There was such times, isn't it? But anyways, what I want to highlight is that China for decades now has, improving connections with the Pakistan, and I think right now it is a possibility that Pakistan will end up on a Rubicon, on a crossroad, when Islamabad has to choose between US and China. And if that will happen, Pakistan will choose China. I think so. Pakistan will choose China if they have to make such a decision. And that means, China will have additional. That means if this conflict with Iran continues, Pakistan will assist Iran more intensively, and also China will have direct link, by the way, with Iran to send military weapons to Pakistan, right? Although there is other ways also. China can send its weapons from other directions to Iran. So Pakistan is an interesting topic because, first of all, because I myself interested what kind of decision Pakistan will make. Will they choose US or China? Because they have to make decision, and soon, I think. And in my understanding is that they will choose strategical partnership with China. I think this decision has already been made, even. Although they still are maintaining some close ties with US, with UK, for the time being, as long as they can benefit from that. But if it comes to final decision, they will choose their close ties with China. So that might play a big role in the future of the Middle East. Oh, it's already 1.5 hours, by the way. This live stream is going. Okay. Sorry, dear friends, if I missed your question. We have a question from Al-Mukhtar Al-Fassal. Do you believe that if the West is not stopped, Egypt and Pakistan will be the next on the Western next countries war list? That's a big question. Pakistan, yes. US will definitely try, and already tries, by the way, US and UK, their intelligence services, to create divide between Pakistan and China. And after all, former Prime Minister of Pakistan and cricket player, what is his name? Imran Khan is still repressed, isn't it, by Pakistani government. I think that action of current leadership of Pakistan clearly demonstrates level of influence of the West that they have, and their attack on Imran Khan and his supporters is attack on China-Pakistan relationships, I believe. But yet again, I mean, if it comes to final decision making, which way Islamabad there is, on which side they will don't really have much option but to choose China, because after all, China is their next neighbor. It's economically beneficial for Pakistan. Close cooperation with China. It's financially beneficial. So it's an easy choice, really. Easy choice. So therefore, US will definitely try to neutralize this, either create civil war in Pakistan, by the way. They might trigger civil war inside the Pakistan, and there is a number of directions in which they can actually succeed in that. Almost half of the territory of Pakistan, by the way, are claimed by Baluchi people, and there is a movement, isn't it? Armed resistance in Balochistan for and armed struggle for independence. So yes, Pakistan is in very difficult situation. Let's say this way. And this country is a nuclear country, by the way. It has nuclear weapons. So I mean, you tell me how dangerous is that, right? And so yes, I think Pakistan is definitely a target for the West. My answer is that. And when it comes to Egypt, well, at least until now, leadership of Egypt was obeying basically every order that they have received from the West, right? So why would the Western elites destabilize Egypt? That is obeying orders. All orders, literally all orders, right? Same can be said about Jordan, for example. I mean, Jordan obeys whatever order is given, right, by the West. So Egypt is a bit different story, by the way. I think Algeria will be target. Most likely, you know, there is more likelihood that West will attack Algeria than Egypt. But I don't know. Anything is possible. In regards to Egypt, I have some doubts that West will attack it right now or in near future. When it comes to Pakistan, I'm 100% convinced, by the way, Western Secret Service is already actively working to neutralize potential Chinese influence in Pakistan, and also to blackmail Pakistani leadership that if they are not obeying orders, if they play some other games, then they will have big issues with in Balochistan and in other regions. By the way, I'm not an expert in Pakistan, but I know it's not just Baluchi people that are fighting for independence. There are some other divisions inside the Pakistan also, right? So that's my answer, dear friend. Jerry here is commenting. Sorry, Jerry, I'm not pronouncing. I'm quite sure I'm not pronouncing your, second part of your name correctly. My apologies for that. Excuse me. Jerry is commenting. Iran sure regrets not having a Russian base in the city of Hamadan. Well, Iranian leadership most likely is regretting now that they did not sign up for military alliance with Russia. According to reports, by the way, Russia was actually offering a similar agreement to Iran that Russia has with North Korea of mutual protection. And Iran refused, according to reports. Iranian leadership was thinking that they will find common ground and common language with their collective West, and therefore they refused to further increase cooperation with Russia towards the military alliance, and probably they are regretting that now. But well, I mean, it's just too late, isn't it? So But nevertheless, by the way, Iran is a strategical partner of the Russian Federation, and as I said, I'm quite sure, directly, indirectly, this way or that, but Moscow, Beijing, and many other countries from BRICS and otherwise will provide whatever help they can provide to Iran. Few more questions, dear friends. Let me check also. By the way, I don't know what happened, but I'm watching right now. I'm checking Rumble stream, and 64 people online at this point. This has never happened before. Quite interesting. Once again, dear friends, thank you all for joining this stream. We have about 300 members of community on YouTube right now, and almost 70 members on Rumble. Grateful to all of you, dear friends, for attention. And we have a question from Nidish Kumar. Levan, even if they destroy all nuclear facilities, how can they destroy data and expertise? I mean, 100%, Nidish. 100% agree with you. All this is just a reasoning, isn't it? They wanted the reason to attack Iran. They want to to provoke regional war in the Middle East. They know best way to provoke regional war that will last for years, so that navigation in the Persian Gulf will be disrupted for a long time, is to create a conflict on sectarian and ethnic lines, and they are moving in that direction. But to start, they needed something, right? And they used topic of nuclear program of Iran as a starter. Otherwise, I mean, okay, they destroy some nuclear facilities that was most likely evacuated, right? Whatever could be evacuated probably was evacuated. Enriched uranium itself most likely also have been hidden somewhere. And okay, there was some damage done with these kinetic strikes, right, to facilities. But and the number of scientists, Israel did kill dozens of scientists that were part of Iran's nuclear program. Once again, civilian nuclear program. There is no evidences, and the Russian president was very clear that Russia and the IAEA have no evidences that Iran was working on a military nuclear program. There is no such evidences, right? And in the West, propaganda is using topic of this 60% enriched uranium. Why they did enrich up to 60% if they don't want to make bomb? Well, they enrich this uranium up to 60% to send a message that we have a capabilities to enrich uranium, but we are not freaking doing nuclear bombs. We just don't doing it. We can do it, but we are not, right? And after all, by the way, this enriched uranium can be transferred to other countries. When during the Obama agreement was reached, reports are that enriched uranium was sent to France, isn't it? Some reports suggest that Iran sent enriched uranium to France. Other reports suggest that they send it to Russia. Whatever the case, this is not working as an argument, as a justification that, well, Iran enriched uranium up to 60%, so therefore they were, doing nuclear bomb. No, man, they made it open, right? They were demonstrating, and IAEA experts knew about this level of enrichment of uranium because they were allowed to monitor the process. And they were, and of course, Iranian leadership knew perfectly well that IAEA media then will report that yes, Iran has enriched uranium first up to 20%, then up to 60%. Yes, that was a negotiating tactic, one may argue, of Iran. But if they wanted to create atomic bomb, they could do it 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But it would not make Iran any safer. That was a calculus, I guess, and I can see argument for that even now, by the way. Although I can also see argument for other side that can say, you know what, now Iran just have to make nuclear bombs as deterrent. I can see that argument, but at the same time, I'm still maintain my position that Iran don't need no atomic weapons, because in that case, regional countries gonna do the same, and overall, no one gonna be any more safer in the region, right? But anyways, to return to your question, Nidish, you are 100% correct, isn't it? They can delay Iran's nuclear program, but they're not gonna stop it, because what about engineering knowledge, scientific knowledge, how to build all these centrifuges, how to conduct a process of enrichment of uranium? It's hundreds of scientists, by the way. It's not just one or two or 10 or 20. It's hundreds, thousands of scientists that are actually working in this field and have knowledge how to do this stuff, right? So they're not going to kill all of them. Even if they will try, they will probably fail, right? So you have a great point there, and that's why I'm saying that this nuclear program was basically used as a trigger, as a starter for to provoke regional war, because they are not stupid in Israeli leadership or leadership of collective West countries. They know that maximum they can do is like harm Iran's civilian nuclear program, because they never wanted to build their atomic bomb anyways, right? And Iran was saying that we want to be fully independent, and that's why we need these enrichment capabilities, so that we would not ask other countries to give us this freaking nuclear fuel, right? That costs money, by the way. I mean, a lot of money, right? And Russia knows this, because Russia is our biggest, yes, I will argue, biggest exporter of the nuclear fuel for their reactors, civilian reactors in this world, right? So you have a great point, Nidish. West not gonna achieve nothing in terms of destroying or completely shutting down Iran's nuclear program. They can delay, yes, further development of this program, that's for sure, but that's about it. But they hope, by the way, for regional war. They hope is regional war. They don't care about Iran's nuclear program. Of course, they know Iran was not building no atomic bombs, by the way. They know it perfectly well. It's just a talking point that they are selling to the people in the West, and unfortunately, significant number of public, significant part of public in the West is buying this crap, right? That, well, Iran was building atomic bomb and this and that. It's total nonsense. Joe Gancher is commenting, did Jordan's Abdullah shoot down any more of Iran's retaliatory missiles again? That's possibility, for sure. Jordan is, as I said, by the way, Jordan is obeying any orders from the West, and I'm quite sure Israeli Air Force is using Jordan's airspace as they wish. And most likely Jordanian Air Force was also actively engaged in intercepting Iranian missiles. This kingdom, by the way, Jordan, and the royal family there is probably one of the most vulnerable, are probably in most vulnerable position when it comes to region. Other royal families are not really in much stronger position, but in a better position compared to Jordan, because this Abdul, by the way, I mean, he is extremely unpopular, isn't it? And Palestinian people and Jordanian people, by the way, I mean, they see him as a traitor, right? As a puppet of London. He is a British, right? Current king of Jordan is a Brit. He is ordinary Brit, by the way. He was just put there to be king, right? That's it. And no one has any respect for that animal, right? That's it, man. This freaking prostitute of the London. That's what Jordanian king is, man. Period. So obviously he will do whatever he's told to do by either Israelis or Americans or Brits. I mean, it's one of the most despicable elements, by the way, in Jordan. In Middle East in general, by the way. That so-called king of Jordan. I mean, this is open asset of CIA and MI6, by the way. I mean, some assets are hiding that they are assets. Jordanian king, no, man. He has number on his freaking forehead of MI6. Despicable scum of humanity. Yeah. And I think it is quite likely that people of Jordan, and there is a very bigger presence of Palestinian refugees in Jordan, isn't it? And I think people of Jordan, including Palestinians that live there, there is a quite a chance that they're gonna, at one point, they're gonna rebel, by the way, because they hate these criminals that are pretend to be royal family there. One of the reasons why this rebellion did not yet happen maybe is because at least at some point, wife of Jordan's king was very popular. She is a Palestinian, I believe, and there are such sentimental moments there. But King himself is extremely unpopular, based on my knowledge of the situation. Maybe I'm wrong, by the way. Correct me in that case. But people should rebel, by the way. Both king, man, this freaking idiot was taken from London, put there to act as a king, and people for decades are okay with that. What the hell, man? Crazy. you know and well, dear friends, I think I mean, it's almost 2 hours, isn't it? Let me check right now some Telegram channels for possible breaking news. We have a statement from Medvedev. If you are interested, following its strikes on Iran, the US is now entangled in a new conflict that may lead to a ground operation, said Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev. He added that some countries are prepared to supply Iran with the nuclear warheads. Really? What? He added that some countries are prepared to supply Iran with nuclear warheads. Wow, that's quite a statement to make. He's talking about Pakistan or what? Which other countries? That's quite something, isn't it? To be said. Interesting. Interesting information. Something to keep in mind. Let's see if there is any breaking news. Well, we have Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps statement that the US strike on nuclear facilities in Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan will be followed by responses that will be worthy of regret. So they are announcing retaliatory strikes basically against US assets. And well, that's going to be a mistake, by the way. That's going to be a mistake, I think. Maybe what will happen is that remember a couple of years ago there was another instance when US bombed Iran, when not Iran, by the way, sorry, when former head of IRGC was killed. Iran retaliated, isn't it? And Iran retaliated against a US base that was informed in advance that strike is coming, so that there were no fatal there were no fatalities among US military personnel on that base. A number of people were wounded in their bunkers, had concussion and so on, but there were no fatalities. So maybe something similar will happen right now. And Iran will retaliate against, let's say, some of US military base in either Syria, by the way, or in Iraq. Although personnel of that base will be informed in advance, or Washington will be informed in advance which base is going to be attacked, and Washington will evacuate its military personnel. But this time, this might not work. When Americans killed, it was General Soleimani, isn't it, head of IRGC, after which Iran struck. At that point, US did not want further escalation. It was also Trump's presidency, isn't it? And now, US actually wants reason for further escalation. So therefore, similar tactic might not work actually, and maybe US will not even inform its personnel in these bases to evacuate, so that there will be some casualties, and the US will use that as a reasoning to go all in this war, right? So, I mean, you tell me, dear friends, which what is going to happen in your opinion. But I think best way to go forward, by the way, for Iran is to not make life easier for its enemies. And if they will retaliate now against US military assets in the region directly, well, that's going to be exactly what globalists want, exactly what US neocons want, and what Zionists want. So why IRGC will do something that their enemies expect from them and are waiting for it? I mean, why? I don't know. Also, statement from Russian Defense Ministry that Russian troops have liberated the village of Petrovska in the Kharkov direction. Good news, dear friends. Is there any more breaking news? Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi stated that he will not announce what actions Iran will take in response to American aggression. Yes, I mean, hotheads have to be sidelined, right? And more rational politicians should lead the policies now in Iran for sure. Because yet again, why should Tehran do something that their enemies are expecting and waiting for? So Let's see how they're gonna develop their friends. Obviously, all day long, there's many other channels will make live streams, even though it's Sunday, and this U.S. attack on Iran is definitely topic of their day worldwide. Although before I end this live stream, dear friends, let me remind you that U.S. attack Iran exactly on a day when on 22nd of June when Nazi Germany attacked Soviet people. And that's how Great Patriotic War started, in which Soviet people, of course, won, but with extremely heavy cost. About 27 million Soviet people died as a result of aggression of the Nazi Germany and its allies, by the way, that they have all over the Europe. Many people don't even realize this, that divisions of SS were created almost in every European country at the time. A number of European states were sending tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of troops as allies, official open allies of the Nazi Germany. Hungary, Romania, Italy, Finland, by the way, and even Spaniards were fighting, by the way, against Soviet Union. I mean, Spain, but then, Spain was a fascist, obviously, and stayed fascist even after Second World War for quite a while. But nevertheless, unfortunately, not that many people in this world know that it was not just the Nazi Germany. It was almost modern collective West, with few exceptions. I mean, there was no SS divisions from Brits and from Americans. But rest of the Western, I mean Europe, rest of the Europe, by the way, they were there, with very few exceptions, by the way. So yeah, let's remember all the heroes that give their lives, by the way, during the Great Patriotic War to defend all of us and the whole of humanity. And dear friends, I will end this live stream on that. Thank you all for your attention. Mr. Miwit, thank you for gift that you make on Rumble. Thank you very much. Thank you all, dear friends, for your attention, for your support. Have a peaceful skies. Have a peaceful weekend, and take care. See you tomorrow.